We welcome you to our August meeting. We appreciate your attendance, the interest you are showing and have continued to show for our airport. We'll begin by asking for a motion to approve the minutes from July 11th.
I move approval of the minutes from July 11th.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes from July 11th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
They will, now that they're approved, they will now be posted on the website. Some of you have questioned when they get posted, but they have to be approved before they're published. Manager's report.
Good morning. I'd like to start by informing you about the new hires that I have. We've started a paid internship program, and several of those, my new employees are here. If I have each of them come up and introduce themselves real quick. Kate.
Hello, I'm Valerie. I'm studying at USU Aviation Management, and I'm here from the Valley, from Logan.
Hi, and I'm Kate Scott. I'm originally from Farmington, Utah, and I'm a senior at Utah State studying airport management.
And we have one more, Casey Maxwell. He's also a senior in the USU Airport Manager program, trying to surround the airport with young wasn't a requirement, but they happen to be young, positive, outgoing, educated people to help with the implementation of what we're trying to do at the airport. The runway project, the painting project, we have been awarded that money from the FAA, and then we have our portion in place. Right now, that project is in the bidding process, so Armstrong is taking care of getting the estimates from different companies. Once we've gotten through that process, we'll be scheduling the painting project later this year into the fall. Also, I got a welcome phone call this last week from UDOT who says it sounds like they have money for us for our beautification project to restore the historic tower there, the one where the wind's blown the windows out. So it looks like the state of Utah is going to be the first money in on that. So that's positive.
Do we know how much?
We don't have an amount yet, no. Bills are going out for leases this week, so people should look for those. Also, we will be beginning to schedule hangar inspections. I'll be getting with the fire chief so he can do the fire inspections, check for fire extinguishers and the safety thing, everything that has to do with fire safety in the hangars, and those inspections are upcoming, and we'll be getting a schedule out so people are aware of when they can sign up for those inspections. So that's my report this month.
Any questions for the manager?
I just want to commend Bob for the intern program. I think that's brilliant, and especially having these talented, educated students right here in our valley, taking advantage of their expertise and also using that to develop future leaders for the airport, I think is a great move. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a carryover item of the lease with Union Pacific. It didn't make the agenda. Any objections to us going ahead and acting on that today?
Doing what?
Acting on
Acting?
Just approving the lease, basically, right?
Just it'd be to approve the lease that we provided you a copy of.
Taylor, is that okay if we haven't noticed it to go ahead and approve it? I mean, we've all reviewed it, we've all seen it, we've discussed it in past meetings, but what's the word on that?
Generally, all actions that you take need to be noticed. So I'm not sure why it didn't make it on the agenda for this time, given that you elected to take some additional time to review it and approve it this time. So,
Does it require board approval, or can we just give direction to the manager to move forward with it?
I don't think this requires board approval, but I would direct you to go ahead and execute this lease as it's already been significantly delayed.
Great.
So, and I don't have any further comments. I feel like a broken record. I've talked about this issue for going on 2 years now. So if we could get this put to bed, that would be good.
Okay.
Well, considering that it's not on our agenda, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking official action, but I think it's appropriate for us to give direction to our manager to move forward with the lease and get it implemented.
Except it's a lease with the authority board, not with the manager.
Well, if
So-
I would say then we could give direction to our chair to move forward and sign the lease.
I take that as a
I'm
motion.
comfortable with that if, if that meets the criteria, because we have discussed it repeatedly.
Can I take that as a second?
Well, again, we can't, that's giving direction. We're not making a motion. We're
That-
giving direction.
You can give direction.
Okay. Take care of it.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement to give direction to move ahead with the lease?
And if I could make a
Okay.
point of advice, I would advise you to ratify the decision that the chair may make to go ahead with this lease at your next meeting.
Okay?
So if we could put that on the next agenda, that would make it
Okay.
nice.
The hangar lease subcommittee, who's making that presentation?
But I will start on some of that. I think we had sent some information to Taylor, and haven't seen that back. And when we do, I think we'd meet, but I don't know that I've seen that back, so I think you're having time to.
Yes, I reviewed it and sent back a message 7 days ago.
Yeah. Taylor sent us a
Suggesting
lease.
some additional provisions, specifically pointing to the lease agreement form that Ogden Airport uses, one of our peer airports. And I'd like to discuss that with you and look towards emulating that model and including some of the provisions that they include in their agreements.
Did you send it back to the full board or just Janine?
I reviewed it, and I think that the Ogden lease has many provisions in it that are things that we need to cover, and I did send you back something this morning, but I feel like our lease as it currently stands is not meaty enough to cover some of the legal issues that might come up. So I would propose, we spent most of our time talking about fees and things like that. But I would propose that we take that lease form, add into it the items that we discussed in terms of fees and things like that, and bring it back to the full board next month. So, or get it to you ahead of time so you can review it. I felt like the lease from the Ogden Airport was more thorough and covered more potential issues than our lease form did at the present moment. And so if the board would approve, I would propose that we add into it the numbers that we discussed, or add it as an addendum, and send it out to the board for review so we can discuss it with everybody having it in hand next month.
And again, we scheduled some public comment time, but obviously if the public doesn't have the information yet, we'll need to continue that as well. But again, I think we need to get it out to them in a timely manner so they also know what the proposal is and then can make appropriate comments, so.
Great.
Carl, did you get that?
I got it, yeah.
Okay. So I haven't seen that, if you wouldn't mind. I looked at my email, I didn't. So I haven't seen that update, so. But I think it would be good for at least the subcommittee that was assigned to sit down at least once, review what that was together, if we
And
couldn't.
do you want to kind of put the numbers out there, so at least that portion is out with, or do you want to wait until there's kind of a full draft of the contract?
I think numbers we've talked about are present with what Dr. Jones had talked about. So at that point, I think the numbers are the same
Right.
in that
And the
realm.
report's available on the website.
And that report's available. So if there are comments on that one, I think we should take comments on what Dr. Jones's suggestion was, and we could take that into consideration.
Right. And we've noticed a public comment, so we should certainly open it if folks want to, to make comments, but then we also should probably do that next month as well. And I will be out of town next week, I apologize, or next month for our meeting, so.
We received a number of written comments, which were appreciated and were very helpful. But let's take time this morning, knowing that you don't have a full understanding of what the proposals are going to be and will have in advance of the next meeting. But let's go ahead and take any input that you might have for us today and give you a chance to voice your suggestions or concerns. We'll ask you to come forward to the mic, give us your name, your hangar location, and share with us your thoughts.
Dan, Boston E11. You talk about the Ogden Airport. I hope when you look at the proposals, you'll understand they've been in a lawsuit for 2 years. And I think if you look at those proposals, you better be a little cautious on what you're going to get into, because I'm not sure that what they did was good. I don't think our mayor's bad like the mayor that was down there that was that anti-aviation. But I would warn you or caution you to kind of be a little concerned about the proposals from Ogden.
Do you have a specific
Yeah,
clause?
The one clause was a guy, they would not renew his lease, even though he'd been there. The full TSA 24/7 was an issue. Also, what the hangars reverting back to the airport board.
So the reversionary and the,
Think about it for a minute.
no, I just was curious which clause you were talking about, so.
Well, the thing is, you own a home, I assume.
I certainly do.
Is it in the county?
It's within the county.
Would you like the county to own it in 30 years?
Certainly wouldn't.
Okay. Treat us the same.
Thank you, Dan. Are there others? Jerry?
Let's see, my name is Jerry Worston, and we have hangar F7. You mentioned that you compared the proposed tax increase to the Ogden Airport, and then why are we doing that? Why do we have to compare with Ogden? I mean, we're long-term residents of Cache Valley and owned hangars here for 20, 30 years, and now why are you trying to raise the taxes, doubling the taxes, so that we have to compare with Ogden? Ogden has commercial airlines that are flying in there.
You mean the rent?
Yeah, that's very different than the fees
Yeah.
and the rent. That's different than taxes.
That's correct.
You're not talking about, you're just talking about the rent.
The lease, correct. So why are you trying to compare with Ogden?
What I said was that we received a copy of the Ogden lease agreement that doesn't have any fees attached. It's just the words, the agreement words.
So why are we trying to compare with Ogden?
I felt that their lease agreement was thorough and had a lot of stipulations in it that I think are appropriate for any airport.
Yes, I agree with that, maybe, but I don't see why we're trying to compare with Ogden. Ogden has commercial airline business there all the time.
We're
So
not.
obviously,
comparing.
they're in a higher class than what we are here in Cache Valley.
Again, we often look at peer airports or, various other things in the city.
Compare
just
with
to
Brigham.
compare.
Brigham is more like what we're at.
Again, and we haven't
compare
made
with
the
them.
decisions, we're just gathering information and input, so thank you.
So, all right, I just expressed concern for the comparison with Ogden when we have no reason to compare with Ogden.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron?
Aaron Dykes with Utah State, FL 9, 10, 11, 13, FL, anyway, a bunch of hangars out there. The issues I have with Ogden that we have right now is you see everyone leaving Ogden or being forced out of Ogden. So the comparisons with them, they are being driven out of Ogden. They're not giving the chance to be there. So the local users and constituents are being dehomed for their airplane, so to speak. So they're going elsewhere. They're looking for other places to be. And they're looking for a friendly community. So again, following the word of caution on there. Second, I'm an anomaly here. I'd much rather pay higher hangar fees because I can pass it off to every student who goes in there than a landing fee. So if you're going to talk about that, I'd rather pay more per square foot because I can budget that over the year and figure that out than to say every single time that student who's learning how to land has to pay a landing fee. That gets rather expensive and I can't put that into my fees. I'm a 12-month. I can only put in my fee changes in January. And that gets approved for the next January. So that's my cycle. So if we say we're going to increase fees or whatever, realize my lag time is going to be a little bit out there because I work for the federal government, which in my opinion is molasses on top of a glacier. We're moving, but very slowly and maybe not the direction we want to. So that's just what I have to say on there, just my words of caution on there that we love it here, we appreciate it, and as we grow, we are finding that being our own worst enemy, and probably half of you guys here flying enemies, we're starting to dissipate and move some of our training elsewhere so we can open up some here. So we can be moving 3 of our aircraft to Brigham City as we've purchased a hangar there. So again, we're looking at ways to help make this airport a fun, enjoyable place and not risking your neck every time you get out there. But that's just my quick comments. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
A couple of questions, if you mind.
Uh-huh.
First of all, how many hangars do you have for USU?
For USU, so we've got the flight and the maintenance. Maintenance has 2 hangars down there on the south end, and then we have 5 hangars. We leased one out to EP Systems as they're trying to electrify aircraft. So we've got at least one out there, so that'd be 6 if you count that.
Okay. And secondly, understanding that the hangar, there's kind of 2 parts to the hangar. One we've talked about, hangar lease, but then also property tax. If you were in our spot working with yourself, there is the hangar rent, and then along with that hangar rent, I also pay a property tax. But USU, when you have a hangar rent, but then your property tax exempt, so to compare you to...
We still pay all the same taxes.
Same property tax?
At the airport, we pay
that was my
the
question.
31 cents per square foot off the flight line, and whatever it is on the flight line, we're paying the same that everyone else does.
For the hangar rent?
For the land lease that our hangar sits on.
But
Which
not a
gets
property
tricky when
tax
you're
for
trying to buy a hangar, because I've got to now own a hangar that I don't own the land for, so all the lawyers
But
have
do
a
you pay
heyday with that one.
Do you pay the property tax on the building?
We pay all the taxes that the hangar fees on there, so we've got the fees that everyone else at the airport has.
But you don't pay property tax.
You don't pay
'cause
property
you're a
tax,
state.
though.
You're, like, for the building itself, you don't pay any property tax because you're a state entity.
I know that we get refunded stuff, but that's about it, right? On my fuel
Anyway,
surcharges and stuff.
Just trying to look at how we make sure that we look at all the different pieces of the puzzle, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, we're hoping that 70,000 landings helps you guys out.
There's a landing fee.
Joshua Campbell, FL3, I think is our hangar. So just on the front line there. So I don't have the full information packet, as you know. I think one of the things that's really important in what we're doing here is it seems like today we're discussing mostly lease and landing fees and really revenue sources for the airport. But I think another thing that's really important is if we could get to some venue, probably not this one, but I know there's legal restrictions with regard to how many of you can show up at any other sort of thing, but where we can have an informal exchange that helps drive the purpose of why we're doing all of these additional fees. I have my ideas about why they're doing them, and I'm actually supportive of several of these changes, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I would really like to see the airport move from a minimum cost structure to a goal of like an economic impact point of view. The reason we use the airport is merely to facilitate a connection with our remote offices. And we're headquartered here in Cache Valley. We bring several $100 million to headquarters. We pay a lot of those out in salaries. We have about 1,100 employees worldwide. Half of those are here in Cache Valley. And so I think Logan-Cache Airport is actually evolving from what has traditionally been an instruction point, a huge instruction point with Utah State. That's actually the program I got my license through in '95. And I think that we need to find a path forward that allows us to move from the non-controlled, kind of just general use airport into a more professional setting that can provide a hub for economic activity through training, through businesses. There are, like we say, 6 corporate flight operations out there, and then there are other corporate flight ops that utilize it, like Costco, et cetera, that come into town. But at the end of the day, if we have to triple our rent lease or whatever, you know, we do pay property tax, all those of us that aren't state, you know, out of it on state. But if we have to do things like that so that we have appropriate equipment and operations and snow doesn't deter us from our operations, et cetera, then it's what we got to do. But I'm just encouraging, if there is a way to get out of this formal setting and maybe into one of our hangars for like a community night to talk about the purpose and the vision of what we users and council really want this airport to be, and then come back and circle back around to, well, that means we have to put leases like this. We need to, the major revenue drivers for an airport are land leases and fuel. And occasionally you have AIP programs based on whether you're a overflow airport, regional airport, municipal airport, et cetera. And there are federal funds for a lot of those things. But landing fees and other things like that, if you're gonna run them, it's kind of counterintuitive. Even though that was in the report, because it's like you're saying, hey, come use our airport, but don't. They discourage use. You'd rather up your use and then have revenue from land leases and fuel flow, those kind of things. But I'm just saying that I really think that it would be nice if we could get another avenue for input on this to truly understand the purpose and why, and hopefully remove, I sense the adversarial contention. And I'd like to find a way to kind of remove that, and together, users and Airport Authority Board make this thing great. Because I think by the time you look 10, 20 years down the road, this airport ought to be serving 120, 150, 200,000 operations. It ought to have $100 million plus economic impact to this valley. And it's never going to have commercial air service, but you'll still find that economic impact. And so if we can find a path to that, then I think all these adjustments to land leases and hopefully not user fees, but you know, some of these other things will actually make sense, and we can all move forward together on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Joe Bates, we own Hangar G7. As the former treasurer of Chapter 58 of the EAA in Ogden, I'm well familiar with Ogden's lease, and I can tell you it's thoroughly one-sided for the government and nothing for the hangar owners. the lease and the airport authority there, the airport manager, as he worked directly for the mayor, used the threat of cancellation or non-renewal as a cudgel to beat the hangar owners into line so they wouldn't object to raising the lease rates well above what was in their lease percentage. Year after year, their lease rate is high because they did that without regard to the leases. And if you objected, they told you they would either not renew your lease or they would just pull it. So be very careful when you read Ogden's lease. And if you're going to use that for points in a new lease, please publish it online on your website so everyone can read it.
Absolutely.
Another point, if you're thinking about increasing the ground area around the hangars, that's one point, maybe the protected area around a hangar. But I think you would have great objection to paying for common areas. That's the airport's responsibility. That's where FAA funding comes in. It has nothing to do with us as pilots and hangar owners. The airport should take care of its own common areas. Thanks.
Thank you. So my name is Marv Howling. I am in the process of trying to acquire hangar C5, and I don't have a lease yet, so that's why I'm kind of interested in hangar leases. I actually have some written comments, which I've been in contact with Ryan Snow, and so I sent them to him just last night, so I don't expect those to be part of the record. But just a couple of items. As I reviewed the audit report, it seems like there's elephants in the room that we don't discuss. And so the lease rates is just one item that, sure, if they need to be increased, that's fine. But I think the board really needs to look at kind of the administration of the airport more globally. And it seems like the two main challenges are the sources of revenue and the makeup of the Airport Authority Board. So on the revenue side, I think it's instructive in the report. There was, it has the typical GA airport is used, and the sources of revenue for the typical GA airport. And in that report, it said that fuel cells and flowage accounts for 60% of revenue. Hangar rents, 25%, and ground leases, 5%. And currently, even in our low KLGU numbers, it says that LGU's ground leases are at 30% of the revenue. So it's already in the range of where general airports should be. So if we increase those rates, we'll be actually higher than normal general aviation. Now, that brings me back to how about fuel cells and flowage? I did some calculations on that, and I might be a little off on these numbers, but it appears that I estimated approximately 800,000 gallons of fuel are sold each year. That might not be exactly right, but KLGU gets $36,000 off of 800,000 gallons of fuel. So that represents at the current rate about $5.26 million. And so our fuel, the airport gets less than 1% of the revenue from fuel. I know that, I don't know what you compare the Logan rates are, like I looked on my ForeFlight just last night, Logan was at, $6.58 a gallon, and Preston was at $5.20 a gallon. So obviously, right there, there's plenty of room to throw in 10 cents or 20 cents for fuel. I don't understand how we can be at $36,000 a year for fuel when it should account for 60% of the revenue for the airport. So lease rates, coming back to that, since I'm looking to purchase one, it is irritating that it would jump up by double in, like right now, where the rates have been similar for, I don't know how long, some of the old timers could tell me, but 10, 20, 30 years. So it's fine to increase rates. We should, for inflation. But those rates should be reasonable and go up. I would suggest maybe going up a significant amount right now, because we need to, and then increase on a yearly basis as the leases become due, increase those rates, 10% or whatever each time. So that's my recommendation. Landing fees, I agree, it's kind of a disincentive for people to come to LGU. Most of us fly right over Heber because they have landing fees, and so who wants to land there? We'll go on to somewhere else. And on some of the things, I'm not sure that the USU flight program, they're very important to the airport, but should be consistently bearing the costs of some of the items that are directed at them, the large number of flight operations, including the Part 139 recommendations. Maybe the USU needs to bear a higher percentage of that cost. But anyway, so just going, the typical GA airport, 60% of the revenue comes from fuel cells, 25% from rent, 5% from leases. I think and then 0 from government subsidies. So if we got the fuel in line, the government subsidies, which is the county and the city, could be relieved of their burden, and therefore may be more inclined to say, yeah, let's turn this over to more of a revenue-based operation rather than a government-based. So I have some written comments, and I'll end there, but thanks for your time.
And we'll be getting a copy of those comments?
I have a few copies. I sent an email. I can leave those to the board.
And one thing we've learned that Dr. Jones didn't dive into is, the FBO that provides the fuel, they have, 26 employees? Is that what I heard? So, again, we're hearing about the revenue side, but we're also not hearing about the expense side, so.
Right. I think, and if the airport is going to be a public entity, then maybe a little more transparency on where is that fuel money, because it seems, as you look across the region, fuel costs are very widely, huge variations, as we all know if you fly. And so how can Preston be $5.20 a gallon and $6.58 a gallon? Although Preston is self-serve, I understand those kinds of things, but there must be a wide variability in what an airport can do for our fuel. So why not get a little more revenue from our fuel? Because we all, if we can work out a self-serve or something like that.
We agree. We think that's a good approach. Unfortunately, we have a 30-year lease that was approved by a previous board, and hopefully we can renegotiate something on that, but we're currently in a 30-year lease that sets what those rates are. So that's a challenge for us, but it's definitely something we agree needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's a shame to penalize hangar and aircraft owners because of a fuel decision where maybe, so the revenue should be proportional to, more reasonable to what general aviation should be.
And
but
also regarding the hangar leases, we don't own any hangars.
Right.
So we don't.
There's no rent.
Zero revenue from that. All we have is ground leases.
Is the ground lease, but the ground leases are, according to the report, about 30% of current revenue, which is in line with what general aviation already is. So if LGU decides to go up by 50%, or even, heaven forbid, since I'm going to be paying a lease, double, then it will be significantly more than general aviation across the ones that Dr. Jones used. Thank you.
How's it going? My name's Jonathan Schill. I have hangar Alpha 21, and appreciate the opportunity to comment today. I kind of want to pile on a little bit about the proverbial elephant in the room. There's another proverb that talks about fishing for minnows while standing on a whale. And when I look at the numbers from last month, I had the opportunity to listen to, and I appreciate you all posting on YouTube the meeting. I was looking at Dr. Jones's numbers, and really there were kind of two things that stood out to me. Yeah, we can get more money from leases, and yes, we can get more money from landing fees, and there's pluses and minuses for different operators for all that. But there were really kind of two whales that I could see as far as trying to fix this delta between the revenues and expenses, which per his report for 2023 was something to the tune of $159,000. And there were two things that kind of stood out to me. One was, we talked a little bit about flowage fees. I think they got Scott paying 8 cents. It was 6 cents or something, now it's 8 cents, and he was recommending 12 cents per gallon, which even that is maybe, okay, that's going to increase 50% on flowage fees, but we're only getting 30-something thousand. So those are minnows to me. The reason that, in my mind, when I look at these, and I just kind of took screenshots, the reason that these other airports get 60% of their revenue from fuel sales flowage fees is because fuel sales. And Dr. Jones' recommendation was, hey, you drop a skid out there with a tank and a self-serve pump and a credit card and a cell phone swipe, and all of a sudden you're generating $1.5 million in revenue. That's a whale that we're standing on while we're fishing for minnows from a bunch of hangar owners. I mean, yes, I own a hangar. I pay for the lease. Yes, I pay the property taxes. I'm all for supporting the kids that go to Logan City schools. That's fine. And I pay those property taxes, so I know that they're property taxes that I pay. And sure, we could increase. One other thing, I guess, with respect, since this is about leases, I just would submit that when you're looking at what a fair or equitable lease fee would be for hangar owners, that you would look and see what is it exactly that we're paying for? Is this a super Gucci airport with a super nice ramp and apron? I spent about $30-something thousand on a 6-inch concrete apron for my hangar recently, which I realized at some point could get reverted to the county or the city. I understand, but I'd hate to say it, brand new St. George Airport with a brand new concrete ramp with no FOD anywhere between. That's an exaggeration. There's always FOD between a hangar and the taxiway. That might command higher lease rates than what would be equitable for the infrastructure that got excoriated last month. So just a thing for fairness there. But my submission with respect to the leases is, hey, let's look at the whales. There was a single bullet on one of the slides that highlighted the other whale. So fuel sales, $1.5 million in revenue generation he had in there for 2025, which would be about $400-something thousand of profit, which is almost 5 times what you're getting in lease right now. So I don't think you're going to raise our lease rates by 5 times to try to make up that revenue that you could get by dropping a skid with a tank down there. The other thing, single bullet, was USU football. And that's not even the aviation program out here. All the students that are busting their hump to be pilots. My heart goes out to them. I went to Utah State. I went to Det 860, served in the Air Force, got to fly for my country because of Utah State and the Air Force ROTC attachment out there. Have a lot of love for the program and even all the students. And I guess there's a second thing up there, but we're not talking about it today, and that's traffic and control tower and those expenses, revenues that are required with the number of operations that we have. So I'm all for getting the revenue to the airport that the airport needs in order to have the airport be successful, because I have great interest in the airport being successful, and I just ask that the focus be on the whales. So if we only have one Part 139 required customer, then I would submit that that customer needs to pay for that requirement. And if we have an opportunity to lease equipment to generate, I think there's going to be probably 70 hangar owners that instead of hating the board, they're going to be very grateful that you offered an alternative fuel source that they can self-serve, requires minimal sustainment expenses, and generates significant revenue for the airport. They're going to love you instead of being frustrated with that you're coming after minnows to try to squeeze a little blood from a turnip. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask a question? I'm just curious, the Part 139, we've got a few that have talked about it. I'm curious if there's anybody in this room that feels differently about the Part 139 than what he has said. I'm just kind of curious if there is anybody.
Was that inaccurate?
No,
Was my assessment inaccurate?
I'm not judging the inaccuracy. I'm just kind of seeing if there's anybody that can speak.
That was an honest question, because I do not understand everything. My understanding was that the only customer was like 15 operations.
I'm not judging. I'm just
football.
trying to ask. The question is there anybody in the room that has a contrary opinion to that? I'm just kind of curious. See if I could get somebody to talk to the other side of that. Okay.
In my mind, and I don't know it, but this was my presumption. My presumption was you got to be Part 139 if you're going to have commercial operations coming in, right? So if we were trying to get this to be a hub like Provo is and try to draw a Legion up here, then we would need that. But there was this big slide that said, no way are you getting commercial here because everyone just drives over the hill and goes to the airport, myself included. So with that being an assumption that is, I think, a valid assumption outside of advanced air mobility, if that ever happens, outside of advanced air mobility, 737's coming into Logan, commercial common carrier service, not going to happen. I think everybody recognizes that. So that leaves us with, well, who needs Part 139? And he had it on there, it was one bullet, USU football.
I think that was the report. I think you were accurate in evaluation of what he reported. I just was curious if there was anybody that wanted to speak for the 139 in that, just out of curiosity. I'm not judging what he said or didn't say.
I don't feel any.
I just was curious.
Ryan, is your question for the audience, does anyone see any value in having the Part 139 other than the USU flights? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of curious if there's anybody willing to speak for the keeping the 139.
And if I could just add a comment, the executive committee, which is Chair Kerr and Vice Chair Hughey and myself, have had an initial meeting with Utah State. Just this last week, we got 2 key players from Utah State that we intend to have conversations with, because that is a valid point. And so we are trying to learn from them how valuable that is to them, and if so, what are they willing? So we're having those discussions, but point well taken.
Yeah, and I feel like the equitable thing would be if we had 3 users that required Part 139, maybe split it up 3 ways. If we have 1 user that requires Part 139, split it up 1 way. That would be my
trying to identify specifically what those additional costs are. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other comments regarding the proposed lease changes? Well, let's then move on to another elephant in the room, and that's landing fees. Some of you have discussed those. We've had conversations with a number of you, and we have received written input regarding landing fees. And obviously, a decision is not going to be made today, but probably ought to give you one of the proposals that would be up for consideration, and that would be in the manner of $1 per thousand up to 8,000 pound gross takeoff weight. $2.50 from 8,000 to 25,000, and $4 for everything over 25,000. That would, the over 25,000 would primarily go to the university, which already pays a significant landing fee. And university, for numbers, they had 22 landings last year. So there's no particular time when a landing fee, if it were approved, would go into effect. Aaron has indicated that his budget would best respond if it went into effect in January. And input from another individual was that don't stagger it. The difference in revenue would not be significant if it all went into effect at the same time. But those are the dollar numbers that came out of the discussions that were held. And so give that some thought. We'll take a few minutes now and you can give some information, your input. Let me say again, your written comments are really appreciated because they get much more consideration than what we remember you having said in a public hearing. We've had 8 people talk. I would hate to take a quiz on what each one said at this point.
But Janine does really good minutes.
So we'll open it now for public comments regarding possible landing fee implementation. First again. Well, you're a good leader, Dan.
Dan Boston, E11. I just have 2 questions. One, go-around, does it count?
What?
A go-around, does it count? Would I get charged for a go-around?
Are you proposing that you should?
No, I'm just asking a question. I don't, the other question is you're sending out this, you're outsourcing it to somebody back east. How much is that going to cost?
20%. Yeah, they take a percentage.
Why not keep it in-house then? If we're looking for money, why are you giving away 20% of whatever you're going to do?
We don't have the staff or the equipment, the software, anything to do it. I mean, are you talking about Vertower?
Yeah.
Just kind of curious, and it's been mentioned.
It's out there with a tally sheet.
I used to go to Heber quite often, and there were a bunch of conferences and educational courses I went to down there. I refused to fly down to Heber anymore because, granted, it's only $4. That wasn't the issue. It was when Cody was charged $25 for using the toilets. I just think it's going to open up a can of worms. If you start one thing, what else are you going to start are we going to get charged, a ramp fee? Are we going to get charged whatever? I know there's a fee for parking and stuff, but if we just do a landing, is there a fee for that at the ramp? If they come in to land at the ramp, and I assume this is all going to come from ADSB information, from FlightAware.
Yes. Let me say about Heber. They have now resolved undisclosed terms, the 5-year-long lawsuit between the city and the airport.
Well, I just know that AOPA had it the #1 worst airport for a long time.
Yeah, they were
I'd
right.
hate to have us be number 2 or 3 in that list.
They're right there with Jackson.
But I am curious about a go-around, if it would count as a landing or not.
Explore that. I will explore that.
Okay,
Yeah. Other comments?
Aaron Dykes again. Everyone knows everything's going up. We understand that. We go to the pump and what was $40 is now $60, $80 to fill your car. So we understand that things are going up. The value driven behind this needs to be clear. If this is just to bring in more revenue for other sources, such as the football team paying for their 149, if that makes up most of the difference there, if we're looking for towers, I'm on board. I'll find a way. But I'm already charging my kids $16,000 for private pilot in the university. So now every landing they do, which right now averages 3 to 4 landings per hour of activity out there. So they do 35 to 40 hours, and we're doing 3 to 4 landings in there. That's significant amount of money. That's going to be hundreds of dollars compounded across the top. So again, that's just the fixed wing side. We throw helicopters in there. Is a hover considered a landing? There's a lot of issues and questions that we have about this, and not a clear direction of where this money is going to be spent. So in all fairness, like I said, I'm a year out. So the changes I make now will go into effect 2026, not 2025. So I've already got 2025 stuff posted. I might be able to do an emergency for fall of 2025, but that's a full year out from where we are right now today. So these landing fees I'm going to be eating for the first little while, which means there might not be an aviation program if we pursue this at a post haste without this knowledge of information coming through. So I honestly would need the information today to make a change for 2026. That's what I need to know. Thanks.
Matt Larson, Wasatch Group. I just have a few questions on these landing fees. If you said over what weight was $4? So if I bring in
over 50,000.
Over 50,000, it's $4 per thousand.
Yes.
So you're going to see a Gulfstream come into Cache Valley because we have one coming. So every time we land a $100,000 pound airplane, it would be $500. Or is that if it's 50? I will tell you that will discourage Wasatch a lot. Because we'd probably be coming in maybe 2 or 3 times a week and compounded over a month. We're looking at $5,000. That's a huge expense. Not sure. I can guarantee that will hasten our move to Salt Lake, where we pay 0 landing fees. So that's my comment.
Thanks for that input, Pat.
How much did the Gulfstream cost?
You can ask that too.
I'm Robert Kidd. I own Hangar C4. My first impression on the question about landing fees, I thought this is a safety issue because it would result in people practicing landings less. And that's the point that everybody needs to have right. And I speak from personal experience. I got metal in my back, transition from flying to touching down on the ground. That's the point where things go wrong. I also thought about this landing fee thing. And you look at Beaver Mountain, they have a season pass. Maybe that would be an option. just pay a fee and land as many times as you want. Doesn't matter. That might be a possibility. As we raise more money for the airport, as I read his report, 10 million here, 5 million here, it's real quick, easy to say, let's do this, but what are we raising the money for? I'm not particularly, I'm not in favor of maintaining the status we have right now, Part 139. I don't want to bear that burden on my back because I'm just doing this as a hobby. I fly gliders, and I'm a member of the South Rampistan Pilots Association. So I'm in the older part of the airport with the hangars. I see things like when it rains, the water subs up out of the ground because there's no drainage. And several of the hangars have a couple inches of water in them when it rains hard. So we don't have street lights at work, at least for the years that I've been here. There's one on my row that we got fixed at one point and then it went out again and it hasn't worked at all. So, and the other thing is our pilot lounge. It got mentioned in the report a little bit. It's sorely lacking. By comparison to, and I'm not going Ogden or anywhere like that, but Bear Lake, Malad, even Preston, they have a, I guess, something more than what we have in the way of a pilot lounge. We don't even have a sign up that tells anybody that it's there. So, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Robert.
Sorry, I know I already spoke. Just real quick, Jonathan Schill, Hangar Alpha 21. Just wanted to highlight, yeah, anything that was like flowage or fuel or landing fees, it's all about those that are using the airport are paying to use the airport. And I grew up flying in Mesa Falcon Field. It's a small airport, 2 parallel runways, had like 250,000 operations last year. We know that the numbers on operations were getting fudged for years, but now with Ver Tower, there's some reality being injected in it. I would expect that for 2024, with reasonable weather we've had, we'll probably have over 130,000 operations, single runway. And the safety of flight is less, hey, can I land the plane? It's more, hey, do we have too many kids in the pattern? That without any type of control and limited situational awareness. So he highlighted control tower, $15 million, a lot of money. Anything, I'm all for having a safe operating environment, and landing fees would discourage people from coming here. Pilots hate them, they're a pain, they're kind of tacky, like really? You gotta pay a fee to land here. I also don't go into Heber. But I operate out of here, and if the money were appropriated for things that would allow the increase of operations so that the USU aviation program can continue to grow and we can do it effectively and safely, then I would be for rightfully paying for the takeoffs and landings that I do. And I understand there's limitations, and that Dr. Jones talked about touch and goes. Yes, I don't think he mentioned low approaches. But regardless, big picture, operations are a thing that affect the safety of the airport, and I think it's a pretty fair way of doing it. Thanks.
Josh Campbell, FL3 again. Just on the way of landing fees, I've always viewed landing fees a little bit like toll roads. And so when you look at them as a revenue generation source, quite often if you have external visitors, they're effective. But if you're trying to tax a local population, it quite often just encourages people to move to Wellsville instead of Logan if you were to implement a toll say on Highway 89 coming into Logan. And so if you're trying to balance a budget, quite often you might lose in other areas like property tax, et cetera, because people want to move to somewhere else. And so as far as landing fees go, quite often at many airports, the local constituents are exempt. But then we probably wouldn't have very much revenue generation from landing fees because we don't have an external draw yet. So this starts to come back to what I mentioned earlier. If we have an overarching purpose and vision of what we really want this airport to be, how can it cover the student learning educational experiences? How can it cover the private hobbyist perspective? How can it cover the corporate operations perspective? It's never going to cover the commercial operations perspective. That is just not a smart thing to even try and encourage. The Part 139 perspective, I think, is one that should be upheld as far as economic impact is concerned. It's just it's not a matter of should we be Part 139 or not. Yeah, we should have Part 139. This program needs it. If you're going to recruit kids and tell them they have to ride on a bus to Salt Lake to go catch an airplane somewhere, you're going to be recruiting a lot lower level talent. It needs it. It's just a matter of who bears the cost of that Part 139. So I think we need to probably shift that discussion. But when it comes to landing fees, we have to create something desirable so that it can act effectively for, I hate to say it, but if we have something so cool that visitors want to pay a landing fee that can be waived perhaps with a fuel buy, that's usually an effective way to do it, then you have something that'll work. But levying it on people that are already paying, up the hangar leases a little more, and forget the landing fees if that's probably a better way to go about it. So just a few thoughts.
Kim Hall, and I'm just an operator out there. I'm just a little bit worried about safety. I would dare say 15–20% of the airplanes that operate out of Logan do not have ADS-B. And then also, if there is a fee, what is, if somebody wants to just turn it off and still fly, and if we don't have, ADS-B was required to try to create more safety. Now, if we're giving people a reason to turn it off, is that really more safe? And because the gliders don't have ADS-B, and a lot of the smaller airplanes don't have ADS-B, and it's not required. Provo and America, in Spanish Fork, they're required to have ADS-B to fly in the Class Bravo airspace, where it's not required here. And so, the questions of being able to, be more safe without ADS-B is what I'm worried about, and penalizing people for coming in. I know that it'll hurt the FBO for fuel sales if you require a landing fee, because people will stop coming here and buying fuel on a cross country.
Appreciate your input. Feel free to put your thoughts that you've had during this meeting and unexpressed to us in writing. And we'll visit this again next month. The next item is a report.
Mr. Chair, before you move on both of these items, it was listed on our agenda that there would be a board discussion about each of these. I'm just wondering if anyone on our board has any comments after those. I know I do. I just want to thank everybody who spoke today. This is a collaborative process. It should be a collaborative process. We have some weight on our shoulders as this Airport Authority Board, and I just want you to all understand what's going through our minds and what we're trying to do. We have a responsibility to manage this airport in a way that's functional and safe and meets all of these FAA requirements, and we're trying to figure out the best way to do that. We want it to be safe, number one. We want it to work well. I don't like it when I get people calling and complaining that the snow wasn't removed or whatever issues going on. I want our customers at the airport to get good service. I want it to be a good facility. And that's part of the reason why we hired Dr. Jones to come in and look at these things, because we want to do the best we can do for all of you. We recognize the value of this airport to our economy, to our community, to Utah State University. It is an incredibly valuable asset, and we have to take care of it if we're going to preserve that value. And figuring out the best way to do that is challenging. As you've all mentioned, there are a lot of aspects that need to be considered. And I appreciate my fellow board members and the hard work they've been putting in. I want you to know that they are working hard on all of these issues. I've seen them do it. We've been in lots of meetings, lots of subcommittee meetings, and we're trying to find the best solution to these various issues. The next part of the agenda is going to be talking about safety. And I've got a 7-page list of safety issues that we're addressing. That stuff costs money. We have to figure out ways to pay for it. But I really appreciate all of you being engaged and involved in the process, and I hope you continue to be engaged. I love the idea that Josh Campbell mentioned about having some kind of an open house or workshop where we can have more discussion and more input from pilots and other airport users. I think we should do that. But I most of all just want to say that I'm grateful for the collaborative nature of this, and I hope everyone stays engaged and keep sharing your great ideas with us.
Other comments from the board?
I have one on landing fees. I look at the comment about being between transient and local. And as I was sitting here thinking of those, transient brings in and they pay for fuel. So we get a small fuelage fee. But the locals will pay for the fuel. They pay for a land lease, whether they're on the ramp or in a hangar, they're paying a land lease. They're paying their property tax. Generally, they're paying for their maintenance to be here. That's an economic driver for it. And they're paying their aircraft registration fee wherever so we don't get some of that revenue to the airport itself, like the aircraft registration or some of those. But the benefit of having a locally stationed aircraft, the more aircraft we have stationed here, the better we have at chances of getting grants from the FAA. I went through that and received discretionary grants through that because you had more local agents. I think when you talk about landing fees, I definitely think that for me, transient versus local needs to make sure that we're separating what the value of the local is already bringing and bearing versus what the transient is coming. And when I go to another airport, I kind of expect that I'll participate some way, either that fuel or a landing fee somewhere else. I don't enjoy Heber because I do skip them and they're right on my way. So I do skip over them and they are right on my way to my parents' house. And so I fly over it regularly and we'll skip them because the landing fees, that's an exact reason. So I know that was mentioned. But anyway, that's one I would say is that we just need to make sure that when we do look at what that one is, that we consider what already is borne by one set. So,
Thank you. Anyone else?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay. Your safety report.
All right, thank you. As I mentioned, there are a number of safety issues that were identified in Dr. Jones' report. And if I could, I just want to mention, I just want to thank Josh Campbell. Thanks for being here today, and thank you for introducing me to Dr. Jones, that we could bring his expertise to our valley to help us identify ways that we could be better. We hired him, we asked him to come in. We really knew about most of these issues. But it's always good to have an outside expert come and look and make sure you're seeing things properly and clearly and completely. And so I am very thankful for the information and the input we got from the Dr. Jones report. And in that report, there were a number of safety-related issues that were identified, and I was asked to lead a safety subcommittee to figure out ways that we could address those. So we have been working on this, myself, our airport manager, and then my chief deputy county executive, Dirk Anderson, and one of our new interns, Kate, helped a little bit as well with putting together the report that's before you. And Jenny, maybe you could put the report up on the screen. Oh, you didn't get it? Do you have it that you can email to her? No? I apologize. We might not be able to put it up right now, but we'll make sure it gets shared. But I've got about 7 pages here of items that were listed. And as we met and started to review the safety items that were in Dr. Jones' report, we discussed also the safety issues that were recently highlighted by the FAA in their most recent inspection and compliance letter that was dated July 16th. So we went ahead and added all of those items to this list as well. And I'm just going to run through briefly each of these items. Like I mentioned, it's 7 pages worth of items, but I think it's important for us to consider these because they are safety related. And the report that's before the board right now, I'll just briefly explain the layout. There's an issue number. Each of these items is issued. Some of them are a compilation of issues. For example, issue number 1 is a compilation of several findings from both Dr. Jones' report and the FAA compliance letter, but they're all related, so we just combined them. The source is listed where that safety issue was identified. There's a brief explanation of what the issue is, and then there are some management notes essentially about what the airport is doing to address that. And then the next column, estimated cost to remedy. What is there is what additional cost. If we've already put money toward that, I haven't listed that. So it either means it's not applicable if it says NA or none additional or no additional funds. And many, or if not most, or all of those are estimates. They're not. I think there are very few, if any, that have an exact cost there. And then the final column is the urgency, and we've listed those as either high, medium, or low. Or if it's already done, we've listed that project or safety issue has already been addressed by marking it as done. So with that being said, the first issue on this first page here is related to markings on the runway. Dr. Jones identified this, and then there were three places in the FAA compliance letter where this was identified, and this is a high priority is how we listed it. But the good thing is we're already working on this. And we have an FAA grant to do this painting project. It will be done, we're confident that this will be done by the October 26th FAA deadline. So that's an easy one. We knew about it, we were working on it, we had the funds, and it's going to be done. If you flip to the next page, number 2, this comes from the Jones report. The ramp is generally in poor condition with extensive fractures and alligator cracking. Foreign object debris is widespread and poses a hazard to engines, airframes, and people when it is disturbed by jet blast or prop wash. So this is a little bit more challenging issue. A long-term solution would be for us to identify additional funding to fix it, and that could be on the scale of many thousands of dollars. Perhaps even millions, to repair and maintain that surface. An interim fix, though, that has been suggested is to get a FOD sweeper, and we think for maybe $10,000, $12,000 we could get a FOD sweeper that could be dragged around and pick things up. So that's something that should be considered. I'll point out some of these. Many of these, like I mentioned, have already been addressed. Some of them we as a board are going to need to work on. That's one that I think the board should consider identifying funding, at least for the sweeper, and also in long-term capital project funding ways to address long-term maintenance of the pavement. Number 3.
Just on that one, just a
Yes.
question. Do we have a crack seal program that we regularly go and do a crack seal program?
Not that I'm aware of.
We
Is
do.
there?
Yeah. There is that, that would be one that would also incorporate into this one if we have that. I didn't.
Is that a contractor we're bringing in?
It's part of the
5 years?
state program.
Okay. Okay, we'll add that. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, number 3, snow control. This is a major issue. This is probably one that I hear about the most from pilots. And I think everybody's aware that this is an issue, and I know on the board we've had many discussions about this. Just in the past year, and we had a pretty light year this last year, which was good, but we spent about $30,000 from that snow removal budget on repair and maintenance of snow removal equipment. The joke about our snow removal equipment is that it's referred to as the museum because the pieces out there are historic. Some of them I think are older than me, and that's a major issue. There's a major cost associated with those, and this is something that we need to look at. One thing in the budget that's been built this year, we did create a separate line item for maintenance of this equipment, and that will help us to be able to identify and then manage the costs that are going into maintaining this old equipment.
David, didn't we contract with the county to
Yes.
do snow removal?
Yes, we have done that. We
This
have.
past year?
Yes, this year was the first year that we contracted with the county to help with snow removal.
So we still spent money on maintenance of our equipment?
Yeah, the county doesn't have a snow blower like we do. They have to come in and use our snow blower for
So
that.
there's a labor to use our equipment.
Yeah.
We
So
just paid for
it's
the
a mix.
people, not
It's a
for the-
mix. They're bringing some equipment, they're using some of our equipment. Some of the effort is being done by our staff, some of it's being done by their staff. So we have a blended approach there. Nevertheless, we do need more equipment, different types of equipment. Dr. Jones recommended a broom. That's something that's an expensive piece of equipment, and getting a new snowplow truck would be helpful. So this is a much bigger issue than can fit into these couple of boxes here, but I list it as something that we need to continue discussing. We feel like the approach right now is adequate, but not ideal. And the snow blower, for example, we spent a lot of money fixing that this year, and we need that, and we need to have a good one. But if we buy a new one, it's $1 million for a new one of those. So our manager thinks the repairs that he made on it should help it to last a while longer, but it's an old piece of equipment. Number 4 on here. Oh, also, just we as a committee ranked the priority of these. If any of you see something that we ranked as medium and you think it should be high, or it's high and you think it should be low, just we're open to your suggestions or comments on that.
Now, number 3 is also on our AIP next for snow equipment with the FAA grant, right? The entitlement funds.
Yeah, and that's the hope, is that we can get some funds to help pay for that. Number 4 is about security, and this was something that came from the Jones report. Our manager is working with a custom fence company on some gate issues, and we are considering switching that from keypad access to a fob access, which would improve security. So our manager's looking into that, as well as cameras. There will be some costs associated with that. This, again, is a high-level estimate. It could be more, it could be less, but that is a high priority and something our manager is actively working on. Next, number 5, this includes items from the Jones report and the FAA compliance letter, but this is about training, driver training. Dr. Jones felt like there was an issue related to driver training. The FAA compliance letter wanted to make sure it was being documented. So in conversations with our manager, these trainings have been happening. Everyone is trained who needs to be trained. Maybe there was some lack of clarity or documentation, but all of those issues have been addressed. Everyone's trained and it's been documented now. So we feel like that issue doesn't require any additional funding and that it's done. It will require ongoing compliance and documentation, but that issue has been addressed. Next, number 6 comes from the Jones report, and this is about the hangar use, and our manager mentioned the inspections that he's going to be doing. This is an issue with the FAA as well, although it wasn't listed in the most recent report. This is a requirement of the federal rules that the hangars have to be used for aeronautical purposes. And in the past, it was not even allowed. The FAA wouldn't even allow any other uses. They have loosened their rules, and we have in our lease as well allowed some flexibility for people to use it for storing other items as long as the primary use is for aeronautical purposes. So that is something that our manager is going to be working on. He's going to be going out and doing inspections of the hangars for 2 reasons. Primarily for safety reasons, he'll be taking the fire marshal and they'll be doing fire inspections, making sure there are things like fire extinguishers and not things like fuel storage. And while they're doing that, they'll also be able to inspect for use and make sure that it's being used primarily for aeronautical use. That is a high priority, but there's not any additional cost that we've anticipated for that. Our staff will take care of that. Number 7 from the Jones report is about the automated weather reporting system. Dr. Jones referred to it as old and unreliable. We're not sure exactly what he's referring to there. We are investigating to see if we can find any issues with it. So far, it seems to be functional. We tested it, but we are listing that as a high priority because we want to make sure it's functioning. That's important. The next item, number 8, is related to that, and Dr. Jones felt like the location of the system was not the best location. It's in the middle of the airfield, almost as close to the middle as we could get it. But as we all know, weather in Cache Valley can vary from one end of the airport to the other. If it's really cold down at the bottom of the valley, you could have a fog bank on one end and a mile and a half away not have a fog bank. You could have potentially several. Not sure if what exactly the solution might be for addressing that, but I don't know about installing multiple systems on the runway. But my understanding is that system is owned and operated and maintained by the FAA. So if we identify some issues with that, we'll work with them on making sure it's functioning properly. And if anybody's aware of any issues with that, if you'll talk to our airport manager and share those with him, that would be helpful. Number 9 comes from the Jones report. The airport has been assigned 1 frequency for all air-to-air communications. This is unsafe for 3 reasons. Volume of calls, 250,000 per year. The majority of calls are made by novice pilots, creating unsafe frequency congestion. And the airport and 8 other airports share the same frequency. So this is something that we think needs to be addressed. And we do think everything should be on the same frequency. But we are looking into what it would take to change, what the cost might be. We are addressing this as a high priority item and looking at the feasibility and cost and steps necessary to be able to change to a different frequency. Number 10 comes from the Jones report. Lack of air traffic control services. Separation of routing is provided by Salt Lake City Center. This is a major safety deficiency, especially with student pilots and commercial airline traffic, the USU football situation. So this is, and there are a couple of the items that are related to a tower and the fact that we don't have a tower. Dr. Jones highlighted this in his report that he said, he referred to us as the busiest airport in the region that does not have a tower. And he also said that would cost us many millions of dollars to install. So this is something we listed as a high priority. This is something we need to address. We've already had several discussions about potential options to address this. And our understanding is that if we build it, the FAA will pay for its operations. If the FAA pays to build it, then we would pay for its operations. Our recommendations from the Safety Committee is that if we decide to pursue a tower, that we figure out a way to build one, and then we're done with our costs associated with that, and the FAA will have the ongoing cost of operating it. There are several potential solutions to this. There is maybe the possibility of using an existing tower out there. We don't know if that would meet FAA requirements. There are a couple of requirements we've already identified that might make it so it doesn't. If we have to build one, we'd have to identify the space. We might have to buy land to put it on. And of course, there's the many millions of dollars to construct it. We've already started some discussions about legislative outreach. This would be great if we could get some assistance from our state or federal delegation helping us to get the funds to build this. So this is a big project. This is one that I think definitely merits further discussion by our airport authority board.
And again, the current master plan that we're working on does have areas sort of designated for a future control tower, so.
Yeah, hopefully one of those areas would work on land that we already have. I was told yesterday that there's a new requirement that the tower has to have 3 acres of land around it, where it's not, it doesn't have anything else around it.
It could be hard.
Yeah, that's difficult. So I don't know how flexible that requirement is, or, so there are a number of things like that we're gonna have to consider if that's the direction we go. But as far as the Safety Committee is concerned, that is something we should pursue and investigate and see if we can get taken care of. Item number 11, this comes from the Jones report. There's no radar coverage over the airport until traffic reaches more than 700 feet above ground level. This means that air traffic control in Salt Lake City has no idea which, if any, aircraft have just taken the runway and are departing into their already crowded airspace until the aircraft shows up on the radar. Similarly, it means air traffic control can only provide traffic separation services to pilots until they are on final approach, at which point they descend below the radar and are on their own. This is extremely dangerous and completely unsuitable for the second busiest airport in Utah. That was a quote from the Jones report. And again, a tower would resolve this. So we've listed this as a high priority, and pursuing a tower, installing a tower, having an operating tower would address that. Number 12, the fuel farm. This is from the Jones report. And he said that he felt like the fuel farm did not meet modern standards and didn't have the modern spill containment barriers that were needed. We just had an inspection from the Utah Department of Environmental Quality just last month in July, and the inspector was satisfied with our current fuel farm and its spill containment. And we also had the FAA inspect it in the last month, and they didn't note any deficiencies. So I'm sure there have been changes in requirements since 1968. I assume we're grandfathered because we have an old one, and I also assume if we built something new that there would be new requirements we would have to meet. But as far as the state and the feds are concerned right now, we are in compliance, and so we're not recommending any additional action on that at this time. Number 13, from the Jones report, extreme congestion creates a number of inconveniences and a very serious question of flight safety. So he was pointing out that our airport is congested, it's busy, and really a control tower is the best solution to that. That's our recommendation on how to best address that one as well. Number 14, this comes from the Jones report. Improve highway access, potentially move the main airport access to be a northern extension of 10th West. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. There are definitely some major capital costs that would be associated with that. There would be land acquisition necessary. There's some major waterways there that would have to be piped or bridged, and that's something that is going to require some serious discussions and potentially funding from the state, the feds, somewhere to do that. I think it's a good idea. I think long-term that would create some great connectivity to have that road just drive directly into the airport, but it's a major project. It's something that we think should be addressed, but it's going to take a lot of money. Number 15, this comes from the FAA compliance letter, and I believe everything from this point on came from the FAA compliance letter. And many of these, as I said, our manager has already addressed. So this first one was about the wildlife compliance plan. This was just a documentation issue. The documentation has been addressed, so that one is done. Number 16, general requirements, various requirements and updates to the airport certification manual. This is just ongoing operation manual revisions that are being addressed, and our manager's working on that. He's just getting the documentation updated. Number 17, an insufficient, this is a big one, and this is one that we need to address as a board. An insufficient number of qualified personnel exists to ensure compliance with the airport certification manual and Part 139 requirements. We've been given a deadline of October 26th by the FAA to show them what we're going to do to make sure that this is addressed. This is the FAA telling us that we do not have sufficient personnel to meet their requirements. The manager has increased his staff level to 4 part-time employees. He's requesting an additional $20,000 per year for part-time employees to allow him to utilize them more. The manager is currently evaluating and consulting with human resources regarding the need for another full-time person at the airport. So this needs to be an ongoing discussion. I think our manager has a good plan for approaching this. This could be perhaps a future agenda item to discuss staffing and how this is going to be done. Our manager will prepare a response to the FAA that he will give them by this deadline, and we'll see if they're satisfied with his staffing proposal. Number 18, vegetation growing around the airfield are creating habitat for wildlife. This has been taken care of with the increased staffing that was just mentioned. They've mowed about 3/4 of the vegetation at the airport, and weed spraying is being completed. Should be done by the end of this week. Everything as far as weed spraying and mowing. So thank you for addressing that. Number 19. NOTAMs are not being disseminated in accordance with Part 139. So there were some issues with NOTAMs not being published. That has been acknowledged and fixed. So thank you to the staff. I just want to mention, there were some issues here that our staff, being new, wasn't aware of. This was an educational experience for our manager to interact with the FAA and get feedback from them. And many of these were simply making our staff aware of documentation or processes that needed to be addressed. Those are being addressed, and my expectation is most, if not all of those, won't be issues in the future because we know how to deal with them now. Number 20, runway lighting. High, medium, low steps are not operating properly. It's stuck on medium intensity. And this is an ongoing project. The manager is consulting with the manufacturer for a solution on this. We're not sure what exactly is wrong, and therefore we're not sure what needs to be done to fix it, and therefore we're not sure what, if any, cost might be associated with it, but this is a high priority. Our manager is working on it, trying to figure out what's going on with that runway lighting and why it won't go to low or high. It's just, it only comes on at medium.
I'm just curious on that one. I don't usually use the low. Is there pilots that regularly use and fly into low?
That's our primary, like it's too bright. When it's night, and we've been in a dark cockpit for several hours, we only use low. Okay. If you're flying in normal conditions, But if it's weather, we want high, obviously.
Show me those hands again, I just want to see kind of the, all right, appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, good question, thank you. The next item on here, number 22, the FAA Mauser lights were not being reported to the FAA, that they were not functioning. There were 17 of them out. Again, this was an education issue. We didn't realize what the process was. They've all been fixed. We know the process now. That one's done. It was no cost to us. The FAA took care of that. Number 23, special inspections were not being performed during construction activities. That, again, was an education issue. It's been acknowledged, it's been fixed, it's been done, no additional cost. Number 24, wind cones are faded and not lighted or visible. So new wind cones have been ordered, but the light issue is an ongoing, and I think I'm going to mention some other things about that. So the lighting issue, we're going to have to hardwire. That one has a solar panel. That's not allowed. It has to be hardwired. And so our manager is addressing that. There will be some cost to that. It may be minor. It may be more to come on that one. Number 25, numerous training dates were not completed within 12 consecutive calendar months. This was related to the ARF. So the manager is going to be working with the fire chief regarding this training and just make sure everything is addressed in the time frame. We're not sure if there's any additional costs related to that, but again, this was an education issue, making sure maybe the training has been done, just wasn't documented, but either way, they're going to make sure the training is done and documented. Number 26, PAPI lights, power control units were located inside the runway safety area for both runway 17 and 35, and this is an ongoing project. This is going to require much more planning, and it's expected to be expensive. The manager is reaching out to the equipment manufacturer to discover the best placement for the power control units. It is possible the manufacturer will state the power control units are in the recommended place. If this is the case, the manager will contact the FAA inspector and request a waiver. So that is going to be an ongoing issue. Potentially, there could be a significant cost to move the boxes, the conduit, the wiring, power supply, all of that. So number 27, marking signs and lighting. The certificate holder shall develop a plan to perform and document maintenance of airport-owned lighting systems, including the windsocks, the airport beacon, rails, and PAPI according to stated regulations. So this, again, was an educational issue. A system for monitoring and tracking these has now been put into place. So that's been addressed. There's no cost. Thank you to our manager for quickly addressing most of these already. Number 28, marking, signs, and lighting. The certificate holder must fix the rail and issue appropriate notams to airport users. So this was completed. Thank you again for quickly addressing these. Number 29, marking, signs, and lighting. The certificate holder must repair the pilot control lighting system to ensure its functionality and issue appropriate notams to advise air carriers. I don't know what happened to the response.
Says July 31st completion deadline right there.
What were you saying, Bob?
So we've completed that.
Okay, that one's completed, so it's done. There's no note here, it's just done. Number 30, aircraft rescue and firefighting. The certificate holder must retest and adjust the foam to ensure the concentrations are within tolerance. So again, this is a training issue. That was done, they tested it, it's been taken care of. Number 31, aircraft rescue and firefighting. The certificate holder must provide training dates for subject areas or retrain to become current prior to the next air carrier operation. So again, this is a training issue. He's working with the fire chief, and they're going to make sure whatever training needs to be done has been done and is documented. Number 32, handling and storing of hazardous substances and materials. This again was a documentation issue. It's been documented. That's been done. Number 33, traffic and wind direction indicators. Runway 17 supplemental wind cone was faded. That's been replaced. And then again, on the lighting issue, we're looking at what we can do to address getting the power there instead of the solar panel. could be a significant cost associated with that. Maybe $50,000, but that's a high-level estimate. Number 34, airport emergency plan. It could be determined if the review of the airport emergency plan was reviewed. It could not be determined if that was reviewed. So that's been done. Again, a documentation issue. It's been reviewed. It's been documented that it's been reviewed. Number 35, a review of self-inspection records. Again, this is a documentation issue. It's been completed. Thank you to our manager for taking care of that. Number 36, again, self-inspection program. This was a documentation issue. It's been addressed, and that was done back in June. And number 37, again, this was a documentation issue of NOTAMs not being issued. That was an education issue. It's been acknowledged. It's been fixed. So in summary, there were a number of items identified in both the Dr. Jones report and the FAA compliance letter. There are some of them that we're going to need to work on still. There is some significant costs associated with some of them. I think some of these warrant being future agenda items for additional discussion by the board, and some of these are going to require some additional funding that we'll need to allocate to our staff so they can address these. I just want to thank our manager and his staff for quickly addressing so many of these and taking care of them. I do want to mention as well that you'll notice on all of the FAA requirements, they all came with a deadline, and some of them were very short deadlines. Some of those deadlines I think have already passed, and thankfully those issues have been addressed. But those are critical issues, and all of this ties back to the overall discussion about us having adequate resources to do things right. Safety is the most important responsibility of all of the responsibilities we have in managing this airport, and we have to have adequate resources to do that. We have to have adequate staff. We have to have adequate infrastructure. If we don't, it's not going to be safe. All of that costs money, and that's why we're having the discussions we're having. Thanks again. If there are any questions from the board, Bob and I would be happy to address that, but that's our report from our safety subcommittee.
Any questions?
Thanks for working on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's important we address those issues, so thank you for your work on that. And your team.
Okay, I think open house. Barrett?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come back and talk. Baron Weiss from Utah State, but today I'm wearing a different hat. Two things are coming up in September for Utah State is a previously approved 5K on the 14th of September on runway 1028 in Charlie Way. We'll be working with Rob and the interns to help get that set up. We've done that several years as a fundraiser for Frank DeLeon Compress Scholarship, so we're very excited about that. On the 21st, we'll be hosting a Girls in Aviation Day, just by way of announcement. So we'll be bringing in, last year we had over 100 young women, plus girls ages 8 to 18 and their families, and in our hangar and that parking lot, but still out on the ramp. So we're pretty excited for that. The two things that I mentioned coming up here, so we are going to host the Utah Aeronautics Conference here in Logan-Cache Valley next summer. So it'll be June 25th to 27th. 2025, but we're proposing, and we talked about it last month, about doing an airport open house. It's been 10 years since we've done one, and so next Wednesday we'll have a meeting for all those interested in being on a committee to help to move that along. Since our meeting last month, we've already talked to Barry Hancock and Carl Gashler about bringing Red Thunder here. We have an inquiry out to Hill Air Force Base about getting some static displays. But we're looking at doing just an airport open house format similar to what we did 10 years ago. So it's not going to be an air show with all the FAA requirements. There are still some requirements for an aerobatic box, but we'll be working with the Airport Authority Board, and Ryan, I was asked to coordinate with you with the board, and obviously the airport manager. But I think for anybody that would like to, just see me afterwards, and I'll give you my contact information so we can get this committee moving forward. It'll be Saturday, June 28th, 2025. Similar to the format from 10 years ago, gates open at 8, the open house starts at 9. We end up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4. We're still trying to come up with more static displays. Invitation has gone out to the Commemorative Air Force and other organizations from Arizona to Idaho and Colorado as well. So we're looking at doing a big event. So we're looking for some folks on the committee to help out with some fundraising, some other activities to bring out to the airport, a STEM center. We want to make this a big opportunity to showcase the airport. Love to have a master plan there. Maybe those historic billboards that we built from 10 years ago, they've been around for a while. But if anybody has any comments or questions at this time from the board?
On a different topic, would you tell us about your new role with the Civil Air Patrol?
You bet. I was selected to be the Utah Wing Commander. So for the next 3 years, I'll be the Wing Commander for Utah Wing and doing a lot of relationships building with that. It's a great community organization. They have a squadron that meets here in Cache Valley, and they support the airport with lots of volunteer hours, and it's a great youth organization as well as for adults. Thank you.
I had an opportunity to attend the change of command ceremony, and I think it's an honor to have someone from our community who's been selected to oversee this organization on a statewide level. So congratulations on your
Thank you very much. Yeah, I joined 42 years ago as a youth, and my whole career in the Air Force is because of that organization, and it brought me back to education. So because of Civil Air Patrol, I now work for Utah State and have this passion for community outreach. So I guess I'm unofficially on the outreach committee for the board as well as the airport. Thank you.
Any other items?
I'll jump up and be quick. I'm Connor Butterfield. I'm the airport's engineering consultant. Just had 3 quick points. The sign project that already occurred, that's just in closeout with the FAA, just getting the final paperwork done. The paint project that is upcoming, that's actually going to be a state-funded project, but I have the scope of work for John to sign. So that's actually going to be funded by tax from fuel and tax from state plane registration. So kind of like for transparency there, where that money goes, that's what's going to be painting your airport. And thirdly, the master plan will have an updated ALP in a couple weeks. We're incorporating all the comments from the TAC. And 2 other points on that. We do have a new access road in the ALP that was mentioned for a safety concern. And then the 3-acre requirement. The airport does own 3 acres where the tower could sit, and that will be shown on the ALP. So, any questions?
I do have a question about the master plan. It was suggested that we have maybe an open house or some kind of a forum where there could be more informal discussions about things. Was that planned in the scope of the master plan that we would do something like that?
Off the top of my head, I can look into that. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure if we do have the ALP, we could bring it and then kind of have a discussion around that. And we did previously incorporate comments from the TAC, Technical Advisory Committee.
It might be a nice idea to take, they have the fly-in breakfast, and just to take the printout, maybe a board, and just kind of leave sticky notes that people could comment if they have something. I think a lot of you have seen a lot of yet some of those, but that might be something to be able to help, because there's a lot of pilots and come and go and enjoy that, and it's already kind of a scheduled.
Yeah. So Judd's actually watching on the YouTube and just texted me and said that it is in the scope for a public meeting. So that could absolutely happen.
That would work for some of the ones in here to be able to have ability to comment on that, but I think it'd be
okay.
A little bit informal, but it'd be a chance to have that.
Okay. So yeah, it would be just after that we present the ALP, so the updated essentially picture of what the airport's going to look like for the future. After we present that to the TAC, then we can meet with the public for comment. Do something like that.
Thanks, Connor. If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned, and we'll see you September 5th. Now, that's Thursday after Labor Day. hopefully you will have recovered from your festivities. So, stand adjourned.